it sometimes RY, but there's DRY.
Is the ones that spell it RY, is there a different branch?
No, not in this area. All the Lowrys I know in this area spell it the same way. So,
Have the Lowerys been, the Lowerys, I've heard Frank Lowery my whole life.
well, he taught at Bradley for about 20 years.
What'd he teach?
He taught American history, and he kind of got me interested in it. And I taught it for years. I taught school for 42 years.
In Polk County?
Well, mostly in Polk County. I'd moved around a little bit. I started in Georgia when I first got out of college, and then I moved back to Polk County, and then I went to Sequatchie County for 7 years and coached over there, and then came home when he got older and he needed some care, so we moved back. And I retired from there about 10 years ago.
That seemed like a long time ago.
Yes, it does. It does, but here's what they tell me, and I can vouch for it. As the older you get, the days get longer and the years get shorter. Because, as you get older, sometimes days get long.
Yeah.
If you don't, especially if you're not active, if you can't be active, which I've been really fortunate, and I can be. My health so far has allowed me to be active.
Are you in your 70s yet?
75.
75.
75, and
That's how old my mother is.
is that right?
Yep, 75. Juanita Ornby?
Juanita Ornby. I've heard the name Ornby for years here, and
They lived on sort of this side of Bradley County.
yeah.
Bates Pike.
Yes. I know that area quite well.
Her brothers were Jim, Jack, and Joe Ornby.
Joe Ornby.
Joe Ornby, that's my uncle.
Now, Joe, is he the one that, didn't he have a business or?
He built houses also.
Right. Now, does he attend the Central Church
Yep,
of
that's
Christ?
where I go.
Yeah, I know him. You go there? I
Yep.
go to Benton.
Oh, is that right?
I go to Benton.
Benton Church of Christ?
Yes.
Jackie G?
Jackie G went there for about 40 years. Now she's going to Union Grove.
Yeah, I was raised at Union Grove.
Were you? Oh, okay. You knew the Whaleys then.
Oh, yeah, Don
Whaley?
and Betty
Yeah.
and Jeff and Greg.
Yes.
Doug.
Yeah.
What was the other brother's name?
I don't know, but my brother-in-law worked with both of them at Bowater.
Bowaters, yeah.
Yeah.
Jim Whaley.
Yeah, Jim. One of them led singing over there
Jim.
for years. Is Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
How long have you gone to Benton Church of Christ?
Oh, well over 40 years.
I've been there before.
Have you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Several times.
Danny Rogers. You know Danny?
No, is he the preacher now?
He was the preacher. Now he's going to Eastside because all of his family, a lot of his family goes there. So yeah, he was our preacher for about 30 years.
Y'all have never paved the parking lot.
No, sir, we haven't. Never have. Never have.
Isn't that strange? Here you are, a member of the Church of Christ like I am. You know, I ride bikes by the Benton Church of Christ.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, do you ride with Dennis?
Dennis.
The boy that works at the trustee's office. What's his name?
Oh, Tim Akins. Yeah, I ride with Tim.
You ride with him?
Yeah.
Right? Do you ride by our farm down there off of Chester?
I ride by your farm.
Okay, all right.
We go down York Road,
Yeah.
go across Chestuie, and you're on the left, right? Or the right?
On the right. Right there at the forks of the road, the four-way.
Yep.
Yeah, our farm starts north, everything except for a few acres north of York Road.
Now, those people that live on the corner on the right, they really stay busy, don't they? They work in the yard, they work on their house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know who they are, do you?
No, I don't.
But if you go down through there, we call it the Indian country because it's so quiet. You feel like you're going to see an Indian come out of the woods or something.
Yeah. Through there on York Road, you're
On
talking
York,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the York Road north of Chestuie. or north of a after you go across and that house is on the right and then your farm's on the right, that's York Road too, right?
Yes.
And it ends up at next to John Morehouse.
I don't know. See, there's, like if you're coming from York Road off 411,
Yeah.
through there, like you said, all the curves.
Yeah.
Once you get to Chestatee,
Uh-huh.
all of our farm is on east of Chestatee. And it used to be bigger than it is now. A lot of the property's been sold. My grandfather, well, that 550 acres was purchased by my family in 1840. You know, the Indians left here in 1838.
Right.
Removed them. This land was purchased in 1840. We've got handwritten deeds for it when they wrote it. Of course, everything back then was handwritten, obviously. We've got those deeds. So that farm has been in our family for nearly, well, about 180 years.
How did they describe it in the deed?
I haven't really, see, we found those deeds after my uncle passed. They had a big house at Ocoee, and I mean big house. It's one of the best houses in the area at that time. And we went in there to get some of the valuable furniture out because nobody was living there. And we found the deeds, and my sister's got them now where she can put them in a fireproof safe in her house on where they'll be preserved. But I never have read them, but I know you've been in construction, seen deeds. They were just...
I saw one time that said walk north as long as it takes to smoke a cigarette.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, some of them say big oak tree,
Yeah.
150 paces
Right.
east of this and stuff. So it's kind of like that. And of course, my grandfather, who was a great businessman, at one time, that original farm is still 550 something acres. We still got that much. But he had acquired over 1,000 acres, and that farm goes right up to the Polk County line.
Does it go into Polk County?
No, it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't go into Polk County. But he acquired land over 1,000 acres that he bought up around that original farm.
Was that a section they called it? Or
Yeah, well,
a section of what? 160?
it was a section was 640.
640.
640, and I don't really know that part, but I know that he did have 1,000 acres, and we've sold. He had a lot of it in Polk County, and then right on the line. And see, he was a great businessman. He traded in cotton. He
Was all of that cotton fields at the time?
a lot of it, not all of it, because see, when our family moved in there from Virginia, my family Lowerys were from a county in Virginia, and they moved into this area.
Do you know what brought them to Bradley County?
Not really. I really don't know what brought them here, but my uncle used to. I don't know if you know the area there. Chestatee Creek runs right from the middle of our property.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it's low. It's kind of in a bowl shape. And in the wintertime, it's really wet because it's so low. And my uncle used to kind of make fun. He said, when they moved in here, they passed up all that good land up on the Hiwassee River and stuff and settled on this low part down here on Chestatee Creek. But no, I really don't know why they moved in here, but I know we've been here for a very long time because there's a family graveyard right there at Chestatee Methodist Church. Mm-hmm. In fact, my grandfather gave the land for them to put the church building on. Mm. There's a plaque on the
I've
building.
seen the plaque, never read it.
Yeah, there's a plaque there right on the front of the building that says W.M. Lowery. His name was William Marvin, and that he donated the land to put it on. Well, we've got a family cemetery right across the road from it. Mm-hmm. Got a big stone. I mean, it's huge. My uncle used to tell me they brought it in there on a horse and wagon, and it was so large wagons back then was old wooden wagons that they thought it was going to break the wagon down because, and of course, he had accumulated so much land, not just in this area. He traveled all over the South, buying and selling mules and cattle, and he bought 3,000 acres of land in Mississippi. 3,000 acres, that's huge.
After he had already come here?
Yes, after he had come here. See, my grandfather, his daddy died when he was young. He had an older brother named Tom, and he lived at Charleston. Well, he raised his younger brother. That was my grandfather. He raised him, and he used to own a big farm in Charleston between, I don't you call it the River Road now? One of those big farms up there he owned.
Now I knew Tom Lowery. Isn't he about my age or?
No, this was an older.
I didn't know if he had a grandson or.
Well, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. He's buried down here. In fact, all of them are at Fort Hill. And, but it's kind of, well, it ain't funny, but he was getting off a bus coming back from Chattanooga on Old Charleston. They preserved some of that highway there. It's concrete.
Yeah.
He was getting off a bus and a car hit him and killed him. And he'd just been to Chattanooga now, probably on business, because they had business ventures together. They were real close, and I've heard my uncle say that he used to, they called him Uncle Tom because he was their uncle, that he would ride his horse from his farm in Charleston down to Ocoee to visit his brother Marvin.
On what would be Upper River Road,
yes,
I guess.
Upper River Road, and he'd be there by daylight. So he had to leave before
4:30?
Before daylight in the morning. Yes, and they said his personality was kind of grumpy, and of course, my daddy and uncles all called him Uncle Tom because he was. But everybody else started calling him that, and he didn't like it. He said, "Don't call me Uncle Tom. I ain't your blank uncle." Kind of a grumpy guy. But my grandfather on that farm, he had several black families there that worked for him on the farm. He provided them a house to live in. And he made sure they had their necessities, and he paid them. But they worked for him. And you might recognize some of the names because of course, back then in the early 1900s, the main industry in this area was farming.
Yeah.
So he raised cotton and corn and things like that. And the black families worked for him. In fact, one of the elder was what we would call today a foreman or a straw boss. Mm-hmm. And they were Golstons and Westfields.
They're still here,
They're
aren't they?
still here. A lot of them, when the farming went out, they obviously had to move off the farm and move to Cleveland to get some employment, some jobs. But I grew up with black families, and here's a unique story, unique to her family. And when they lived right there, I know where Chestatouret Church is, there used to be a big house there. That's where my grandfather lived, and a couple of black families lived in buildings behind it. Well, my great-grandmother Jane, they had a young black girl that was a member of the family working, came to her one day, and her name was Jane Lowery. Said, "Miss Lowery, I'm fixing to get married, but I've got a young baby." I think he was maybe 2 years old, or maybe even younger. And said, "I'm marrying a man that's not his father." He said, "I'm afraid he'll mistreat this baby because it's not his." He said, "I'd like for you to take this baby and raise it." Now, it's a little black baby. She said, "I will raise the baby under one condition. I'll take your baby. if you'll never come and ask for him back. And so the young black woman said, okay. Well, she took him, and he was so young, they didn't have baby beds back then. She made a bed in her cabinet or, in her dresser and put the little baby in there and kept him in her room.
It's the right size, too.
Yes, just the right size for a baby. And so as he grew, obviously he outgrew that, she made a pallet for him in her closet. And he stayed there with her. And my uncle, who was the family historian, one that taught history, he remembered all these stories and told us. And he got bigger, and it was inappropriate at that time for him to be with a woman's room. Mm-hmm. So they were going to take him down and let him live with, or at least sleep with other black families. So he went down there the first night, but he cried so much that they had to bring him back to her, because that was his mother.
Yeah.
His mother. So here's what he did. He took her family name, John Lowery. And at that time, African Americans were called colored. He would sign his name on any document, John Lowery, colored, parentheses at the end of it. He lived with us. He cooked. He made a garden. He took my daddy and uncles to school if they were sick and couldn't walk, like, they'd have a cold or something, they're afraid it was going to develop into pneumonia. He would carry them to school and come and get them. So when my daddy and Frank, my uncle, were twin brothers. So my daddy worked on a farm, obviously, while his daddy was alive, but after farming kind of went out, he got into the trucking business. And he moved quite a bit around. So I've got two brothers and a sister. Well, we didn't want to move with Daddy all these places, so we moved in with her grandmother, who was getting older, and Frank was taking care of her. And so we stayed there when John, the black man, lived upstairs and cooked, made a garden there, and we all lived there like that. Every night before he went to bed in the kitchen, he would read his Bible. Every night. And then you could hear him going up the stairs. He cooked. We grew up on the best food anybody could ever. Vegetables. In fact, I went to school at Ocoee School, and we used to come home for lunch. It wasn't but a little while walk. And back then, before the cafeteria got there, you had to take your lunch to school. Well, they knew we were going home to a good lunch. And they was two boys that always wanted to go home with us, because we'd have pinto beans, fresh cornbread, blackberry cobbler.
For school lunch.
Everything. Yeah. But they didn't have a school lunch. Had to take sandwiches.
Yeah.
They wanted to come home with us. We'd let them sometime, boy. And you talk about they'd eat. Of course, I don't know if they didn't have that kind of food at home, but they always wanted to go home with us. But John, here's what he would do every Sunday. I never forget this. He'd get up, put his suit and tie on. And I don't know if you're familiar with Ocoee, the bridge there at Ocoee. If you know it, he would walk over there, which wasn't far. It's less than a third of a mile from where we lived to where 411 and 64 cross, and when 64 goes to Cleveland, he would stand there, and everybody in Polk County knew him. Anybody coming to Cleveland would pick him up, and there didn't used to be but one way in from Polk County, right through that way, and there's a black church right there at the red light. The first red light used to be the first red light coming in from 64. He would go to services there Sunday morning, go home with some of the black people he knew, go back Sunday night, and then he would stand for that, used to be the first red light coming in, and somebody would pick him up and bring him back to Ocoee. He did it every Sunday, never missed, that I know of. And everybody in Ocoee knew him, and I can tell you one story here. This is not a reflection on anybody, but you know the times back then, segregation.
Now this would have been about what year?
Early 60s.
Early
1960s. And there's a church there in Ocoee. Most of the people went to it. Well, there were two, what we would call general merchandise then there in Ocoee. Everybody in Ocoee knew John. He'd go down there and sit on the bench after he got his work done late in the afternoon. Everybody would talk to him and everything. Well, there was a preacher, kind of a missionary that lived in Ocoee, got up in that church in Ocoee and said, "Why don't y'all invite John Lowery to come to church here? Y'all talk to him down there. You know he's a good man." He said, "Why don't y'all invite him to come to church up here?" But they never did, that I know of. You know, that was just a sign of the time, segregation. But they all would talk to him, and they liked him, and he liked them. But it was just a different time.
It was just a different time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a different time, and not about getting too personal here. I went to school in Alabama. I went to Alabama Christian College. That's where I heard the gospel and obeyed it. That was the best thing ever happened to me. I played basketball down there. I was on scholarship. I was down there during the civil rights marches. Remember when Martin Luther King marched from Selma to Montgomery? I was there. A lot of my basketball teammates, and they grew up in Alabama, so you can imagine their views on race.
Yeah.
And I didn't go down there. They went downtown to the Capitol to see him come in, and they were, like I said, it was this time they were racist. And I would tell them, I would say, "Look, they're just like me and you." See, I was raised with them. And there was John right there cooking for me and taking care of me and doing everything. So my views on race were much different than theirs. Not that I was any better than them, it's just the way they were raised. And I tell them, I say, "Guys, they're just like we are. They just want to go to school with similar schools, you know." And
yeah, they're just living too.
Yes, yeah. And boy, they jumped me. Yeah, they called me all sorts of names, and I kind of had to back off, you know. I didn't want to fight them. I didn't want to do that, but they would really get. But here's how times changed. My best friend down there on the basketball team, my best friend, I'd go home with him because I couldn't come home here. It's too far. It's in Montgomery, Alabama. And he and I'd go home with him and spend the weekend because I didn't want to stay on campus. There wasn't nobody there, you know, anything. So I'd go home with him. He was really racist. But he grew up and, you know, he graduated from college just like me, and he became a basketball coach just like I did. And he coached at a big high school in Birmingham, a big high school, one of the biggest down there. And obviously his team, probably out of 12 players, 10 of them were black. And he had a son that played, good player. And I know his racial views had to change, or he couldn't have been successful in that, and he was successful. So that was just kind of how things went back then.
Things have changed now. I mean,
thank goodness.
I mean, it's.
Thank goodness, and you know, my sister, who's she lives in Etowah. I don't know if you know anything about the theater up there, the gym theater, put on plays and stuff.
Yeah, that's not. They call it something else now, don't they?
Well, I don't really know, but it's a theater. She's a director. She's been there for years, and she told me, said, "You might not ought to tell some of those stories. Some people might be offended by them, you know." But he was part of her family. John Lowery was part of her family. And I'll tell you the last story. When he died, I was a freshman in high school. He passed away. They had the funeral right over here at this black church coming into town. We went and sat in the family section because we were the only family he had. We sat in there, me and my brothers and uncle and daddy, and all of them sat in the family section. And you know, very emotional for us because we'd grown up with him being there all the time.
What did he die of?
I think it was pneumonia. I think it was, but I remember the day he got sick. And my Uncle Frank called the ambulance to come and get him. And he was in his early 70s. And so, that's kind of a unique story for that time. And but those families that worked for my grandpa, my older brother, he's a couple years older than me. And he told me that all those workers there called him Mr. Lowery and said if anybody said something bad about Mr. Lowery, they would fight him if it came to that. That's how much they respected him because, he kind of took care of them. Now, they had to work, but he took care of them. And I never forget one story. My dad was a trucker, I told you, and he was living at that time in Marietta, Georgia. Had a job down there, and he was going on a trip, and we were down there, but we wanted to come back to Ocoee to go back to school or whatever. So one of the Golston men met us in Chattanooga and was going to bring us to Ocoee while Daddy went on his truck route. So it was in the middle of the winter. I never will forget it. And he brought an old pickup. And I'm sure it was maybe my uncle's or something else. It's me and my brothers. And didn't have a heater on it. It was cold. I mean, it's cold. And he took off his coat and put it over us.
And you was just a kid?
Yeah, we were just kids. I got a younger brother, about a couple years younger than me, and he put his coat, his big coat over us to keep us warm.
You don't forget that, do you?
You don't forget it.
How many years has that been?
Shoot, it's been probably 60. I was probably 10
And you
or
don't
11.
forget that 10 minutes, that 15 minutes.
Yes, and he just took his coat off. He knew we were cold and gave it to us. And, like you said, things like that stick with you.
They stick
with you. And
the good and the bad.
Yes, good and the bad, but kind of getting back to the family.
See, now, did he ever rejoin with his mother?
No, not that I ever knew of. Not that, because she probably got married and moved off.
Yeah.
And here's another thing too. I forgot this. In the family cemetery, he let it be known. He told my uncle. He didn't obviously have a burial plot. He said, "I want to be buried at the foot of the woman that raised me, Jane Lowery," and he is. And we buried him at the foot of her grave.
What do you mean the foot of it? You mean like
it's this way, she's buried, and then he's buried right below her.
So in other words, there's no space between to walk like they normally do?
No. And there's a lot of people buried there, but it's a small cemetery. Yeah, he said that was his request, that he wanted to be buried at the foot of the woman that raised him.
Doesn't that go along with the Bible? It says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." Isn't that the same thing as "don't be racist"?
Yes.
And to my mind, that's what it means.
Well, that it says God made blood of all nations one. And I know I'm a historian, and I know a little bit about what the U.S. Army. They didn't integrate till
they needed them.
Till the Korean War.
Yeah.
In World War II, they were separated. They had a black unit and a white unit.
Isn't that so stupid?
And you know what else is really stupid is that you know, like if a soldier got wounded and lost blood and had to have a blood transfusion, they wouldn't give them black blood or.
That's just so silly.
And you know what? In the chemical makeup of it, you can't tell the difference. That's what the Bible says. You know that God made them all of one blood. You know, so well, kind of getting back to my family.
But now let me get this straight. Your great grandfather, who came over in the 1840s and bought that, was that your great grandfather or your great great grandfather?
Probably my great grandfather, because he was born, I think my sister told me, in 1829, and that's about the time that we acquired property a little bit later, and it might have been, you know, a
so
generation earlier.
He would have been at the age.
Yeah, maybe it was her great-great-grandfather, but this one, my great-grandfather, fought in the Civil War. He got captured. And
what side did he fight for?
He fought on the southern side. And then when he got captured, and they sent him to a prison in either Michigan or Ohio, one of them. But when the war was over and they let them all go home, he walked all the way from Michigan back to Tennessee. You know, they didn't provide any transportation for him or nothing. So when he got out of the prison, he had to get home. So he just walked back here.
Isn't it something that during that time you might be going to church with a family and their son went to fight for the Union and your son's fighting?
Yeah.
It'd be like saying, mine and your kids are going to fight to the death, and we're going to sing to God here.
Well, my sister,
isn't that?
It's yeah, it's kind of.
I mean, how would you get that straight in your head?
I don't know. You know how people are. Their feelings are awful funny. They don't change their minds on religion. You know, they don't change their mind on politics.
What do they call it? Cognitive bias? Cognitive dissonance?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that.
The fancy word to say you don't change your mind.
Yeah, you don't change your mind. I don't care what the evidence, what the facts say.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Let me tell you about Gobbles Automotive. They're on North Lee Highway, just past Captain D's. They're family owned, they're family operated. My whole family uses them. They've stood the test of time. They will do you a good job. Give them a try. They're no problem. Were you always Church of Christ your whole family?
No. See, my family grew up, like I said, Methodist. And in Ocoee.
And you know why that is, typically, they tell me? It's because the Methodist Church would come through the Indian nations and try to teach them religion, and they'd set up these churches that had health care too. It's typically the Methodist Church, and that's why a lot of the people from the South are Methodists.
Yeah. Well, just to tell you something else, you brought up Indians. My grandmother was a Day. She lived in Cleveland, and her father was a doctor, Samuel Day. And she graduated. She was obviously a doctor's probably got more means than anybody, you know. She was an educated woman. She graduated from Martin Methodist. That's a church school over in Pulaski. And kind of funny how the connection is. My daughter graduated from Martin Methodist. And she got a basketball scholarship to go over there. But she was graduating. And here's the thing about the Days. You're talking about the Indians. She was a direct descendant of Nancy Ward. You know who Nancy Ward is, right? She's buried over there next to the river, Ocoee River. She's a direct descendant. So in her family, there was a ring made out of deer bone, handed down through the Day family all the way down to my grandmother. And the East Tennessee Historical Society, my cousins who live in Mississippi, in Birmingham, Alabama, their mother was my aunt. And she passed, obviously, but they, as part of the inheritance after her grandmother died, gave her the ring made out of deer bone that supposedly Nancy Ward wore. So when they opened that East Tennessee History Museum, they donated it to the museum to keep, because they had an Indian exhibit up there, and we went up to the, presentation. All of us did, or all the cousins that were there. And when the Cherokees left here, they made several rolls of names, where they could trace them, where the U.S. government could trace them. The Day family is on one of those rolls. So back in about early 1900s, she, through one of those rolls, applied to the federal government, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, for some compensation. Because, they had to give up all their land here and everything and move to Oklahoma. And they did it in the worst time of the year, right in the middle of the winter, and thousands of them died, Trail of Tears. So she applied for some compensation. Well, her cousin, who's a kind of a historian too, and he can get on the internet and get on the, all the files that the federal government has, he got a copy of what she was sent. And I think it was less than $20 compensation.
Her compensation.
Her compensation for her family being removed from here. And
Now, when we say removed, they were theoretically bought out, right? Or
no, I don't think so, because they might have been. They might have given them, after they went to Oklahoma. Now, they gave them some land out there.
But they signed the treaty.
Well,
it was sort of a trick, but it was.
Some of them wanted, some of the chiefs signed it, and some of them didn't. And probably right up here, there is a statue to one of the Indian chiefs that got murdered.
I remember, I had Debbie Moore here last week, and she was talking about the statue.
Yeah, the statue's right up here. Yeah. And you know what happened when they got to Oklahoma? Everyone that signed the treaty that went out there got killed. Because, they wasn't no troops out there, nothing to protect them. They killed them all. Because a lot of the Indians didn't want to move. And the reason why we still got some here, some of them went back in the mountains over there in North Carolina and Tennessee border, and they couldn't get them out. The U.S. Army couldn't get them out.
Where would be a Tennessee border? Turtletown had a community that never left, right?
I don't really know. I just know a lot of them went back in there and they couldn't find them. And they didn't want to spend all that time doing it, so they just left them alone as long as they didn't. And here's what's so sad about that. A lot of the Cherokees had adopted what we call the white ways.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to the Chief Van House down there in Chatsworth, which he was one of the richest men in the whole state, owned thousands of acres, and they'd adopted white man's dress, the language,
the guns
and everything. And here's something a lot of people don't know. They even had their own slaves.
Oh, yeah.
They either had their own slaves.
They were big into that.
To work the land, yes. So, but what's so sad here, and there's a old stockade over there, they call it the old fort, that used to be on the Polk County High
That's
School
where they get
grounds.
the name Old Fort.
Yes, where they get the, and they've herded them in those forts, and disease like cholera and stuff spread like that and killed them even before they left. But, and also, when they left, when they come and got them, they just took them. Right then, you couldn't get anything out, couldn't take it with you. And the way I read history, that the whites went in and stole everything out of those the Cherokee houses, you know, because they knew they were leaving.
Well, they said that they had bought everything they had that they couldn't take with them, so that was their workaround.
Yeah, they, you know, and you know, of course, they herded them up here at Charleston before they put them on them. Some of them went overland, and some of them went on water, you know, on the Tennessee River down and around. But the ones that went overland, of course, the first ones always can't take that hardest journey is the old and the sick, and they died.
They said that they had a lot. They didn't have any supplies, so that they would sell them supplies and use up all their money that they'd gotten for their land.
Yeah. It was just a sad.
Do you think it was the people during that era, or more the government?
Well, in North Georgia, you know, they had that gold rush over at Dahlonega. In the state of Georgia, just confiscated all their land. Said it, you know, just confiscated it.
Which is which is the reason why they did all of this, right?
Yes, right. They wanted to get their land and stuff. And you know, here is being a historian. Here's what's so unbelievable: Andrew Jackson, who had fought against the Creek in the Creek and Indian War, the Cherokees had helped him.
Yeah.
They had helped him. And then he knew them. In fact, you know, when they were discussing this treaty of removal, the Cherokee leaders went to Washington to talk to him and tell him, don't do this, you know.
Wasn't that John Ross?
Yeah, John Ross, you know, down here at Ross's land, was named all that, and he was a very successful trader. And he signed it anyway. And, you know, that's a stain on, I think, Andrew Jackson's legacy as president. Of course, he was a rough man, you know, I mean.
I think John Ross had a real problem with him not helping them, and he just kind of gave in for lack of nothing else he could do.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there was several chiefs went up there to talk to him and tell him, you know, why he didn't need to do this, that they weren't going to rebel at that time. They'd done that, kind of assimilated into the white man's culture, you know, but they just wanted their land. And, well, that pattern started a long time before this and extended all the way to the West Coast. You know how the treatment of the American Indians were, so it's kind of.
People are cruel, aren't they? Is it human nature, or was it that time?
Well, it was at that time, and I know you've heard this saying. I forget. I think it was one American general. I don't know if it's Sheridan or Sherman or some of them. I guess it was Sheridan. Maybe he went out west after the Civil War. The only good Indian is a dead Indian. Mm-hmm. You've heard that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what it is. And a lot of them consider them savages, and you know, backward because of the way they lived, but they were living off the land. They had a religion. They worshiped nature, and you know, just different cultures colliding, you know. And it was, I don't know. Now, here's what's the funny part, and I used to tell my students this when we would talk about this in history. What is it a lot of people in this area claim? Oh, look at my high cheekbones.
Oh,
I've got Indian blood.
Yeah.
I said, now that's kind of ironic that they claim that now. And back then, you know, when a Indian had an Indian parent and a white man's parent, what they call them? Half-breeds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cher had that song, Half-Breed.
Yeah.
Remember that song she had?
Yeah. So, you know, it's kind of ironic now that people want to claim Indian heritage.
I wish mine were higher.
Yeah. But
get rid of these wrinkles.
Yeah, pull them out. But
but now the Cherokee moved another Indian group out to come here. The Yuchi Indians, is my understanding. So this is something that's been going on since.
Yeah, the Indian tribes, what really was made them, they weren't hard to subdue, but they had inner rivalries too. They fought each other. Indian tribes did, and for hunting grounds.
If they were more cohesive, we might not have been able to do this.
Yep, and this man up here in the Midwest, in fact, he traveled down to this here trying to unite all of the Indian tribes against the white men. He was resisting up in the Midwest, and he went around to the different Indian tribes trying to get them to unite to fight against the white men when he kept pushing and pushing, coming into their territory. But he wasn't successful because they couldn't unite. They couldn't get past their differences.
But it's ingrained in us. Like I just now said that, we might not have been able to do that to them. But I wasn't even here. I'm part Cherokee, part German, and part Italian. So I wasn't even in the mix.
Yeah.
Other than I'm them.
Yeah.
But
so,
I'm still here.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Through my grandmother's line being with Nancy Ward, and of course, and you know the story of Nancy Ward, she helped the whites. Uh-huh. And here's what's funny. I know Channel 12 or one of the TV stations wanted to come up and do something on Nancy Ward, the grave and everything. Mm-hmm. And one of the Chamber of Commerce knew that I taught history and asked me to come and kind of present the side, from the Indian side and everything. And I did. And there was one lady lived up in Madisonville, got upset. She saw it. And she said Nancy Ward was a traitor to her race or to her Indian background because she helped the whites against the Indians. She warned the whites when the Indians were going to attack, and so they could be prepared. But she also tried to teach, and she did, teach Indian women some of the white ways where their life would be easier. Some of the white ways like having a milk cow.
I think they had a school down at Flint Springs for Cherokee women.
Yeah, but see, Nancy Ward's got a kind of a mixed history there. She did help the whites because she was on the Cherokees were kind of matrilineal. They allowed their women a lot of say-so in their affairs.
Well, the women owned the property, right?
Yes, and see, so they had more say-so, a lot more than white women had in their culture.
Why did the Cherokee men do that? Maybe women are better at that.
They probably aren't as rash as the men are. They
more even keel.
Yes, more even keel, and
or maybe not.
Yeah, but I know they gave it, and she was one of the main leaders of the council there, and they listened to her. In fact, she warned them not to attack the whites because she knew.
Well, they couldn't have won at the time.
Yes,
obviously.
Yes, and so I don't know. It's kind of.
Do you think human nature is it seems to me like the commonality in all of this is that humans want to make or build or create better or make easier. That seems to be what and if whatever's in their way is whatever they're against.
Yeah.
We make better cars, we make better houses, we make better this, we make better that.
Well, that and it's kind of if you want to take it to a bigger sense, nationalism, like countries do that,
Countries do that.
Yes, and if you want to take it to a higher level, that's it. And but here's another thing talking about the Indians. I know my grandmother had a brother that lived in Oklahoma. His family had been moved, so. My grandfather was going to take his family out there for a visit. Well, only way to go then to take family was by train. So he'd load them all up. He had 4 kids and his wife and him, and John went with them. So when they got on the train and started traveling, conductor come through with a ticket and saw John was a black man. And she said, he told my grandfather, said, he's got to move to the back. Segregation. He's got to move to the back. My grandfather told him, said, he's part of my family. He's helping with my kids, and he ain't going to back. And he didn't. So, you know, there's probably a couple of reasons why he didn't go. He said, he's not going back there. He's staying here with us. He's part of my family. And he was. He had the same name and lived with them, took care of the kids, cooked and did all that. So, you know, he stood up and said,
About what year would that have been?
Let's say.
50s, 40s?
No, it wouldn't have been in 50s because he died in 51. So I'd say it was probably late 30s. No, maybe early 30s. Maybe early 30s. He went out.
We've come a long way. Not far enough, but a long. Just think about that. Less than 100 years.
Yes.
Now,
it is. And here, let me give you another example. What I experienced during this time period. And I used to tell my students this, and they couldn't believe it, but it was just a sign of the times. I told you my daddy was a trucker. He was living in Cookville. And what he was hauling at that time in the early 50s after the war was over was what we call prefab houses. You know.
Sears and Roebuck houses.
Well, yeah, the ones that they built them over there, and he put them on his trucks and took them to Oak Ridge. He took them down to Marietta,
Not
Georgia.
trailers.
No, not trailers. These are
step
prefab
down
houses. They had, your construction man, they had one wall, you know, made all that.
Sort of a Sears and Roebuck.
Yeah.
But a step above.
All right, we all, there was me and my dad and my other brother and one of the black drivers were coming from Cookville to Ocoee. Well, we stopped in Crossville to eat. Me and my 2 brothers and my dad went in the front door. He had to go around to the back, go in the back door and eat in the kitchen.
And why?
And then when we came back out, we all got back in the truck, and he got back in. He didn't say a word. He didn't complain about it.
He might not even notice. That's just the way.
That's just the way it was. But what I'm getting at, somebody said, and it got crowded in that truck because it was just one bench, one long bench. He said, somebody eat too much because it's getting crowded in here. But that's just the way it was. And see, even when we were at home, and there'd be a black man working around the house, and John would put dinner on the table. Me and my brothers would go in and eat. And then the worker would go in after us and eat. They didn't complain. Just the way it was at the time. And
if you was to go back to that moment, would you say, I'm going to eat with them? Do you ever get to feeling sort of bad about the ignorance that you had?
Yeah, I did. And like I said, when I went to Alabama, they called me, and I'm not going to say the word, but you know the bad word, lover.
Yeah.
They told me that. And that's what they called me. Mm-hmm. And I said, no. I said, they're just wanting the same rights that we do, that we have. And I went to 2 years at Alabama Christian. It was just 2-year school then. And then I transferred to Troy State. And here's a side note. Guess who gave the graduation speech at Alabama Christian that year?
Who?
George Wallace.
George Wallace.
George Wallace. He was in office. he come and made the graduation speech.
Yeah.
I never will forget it.
He became the blunt of a lot of jokes, didn't he?
Yes. He was a segregationist, you know. I mean, that's... But anyway, I went to Troy, and while I was there, I played basketball there, and they were recruiting black players then. And I know, I forget, one came in, he was about 7 foot tall, and he had to bend over to get in every door in the gym. And he didn't sign with Troy, but he was a good player, later played in other things, but they were recruiting him. So I saw a lot of changes, and while I was at Troy, I mean, this is the way segregation was. They had a theater in Troy. All the blacks had to go up a outside stairs and sit in the balcony, while the whites come in the front door and sit down.
You know, my kids wouldn't have any clue what you're even talking about.
Yeah,
That's how far removed it is.
Yes,
Of course,
yeah.
it's not maybe where it should be, but it sure is better.
it's better. Now, I grew up in a county that's got a terrible history, racial history,
Maybe the worst.
maybe the worst.
Maybe the worst.
Here, I can illustrate it.
Copper Hill may be a little worse.
Yeah, I taught 2 years at Copper Basin High School. But anyway, I'd moved down to Polk County and I was coaching basketball. I called Coach Stevie Williams. I don't know if you know him or not. He coached at Bradley.
Who?
Stevie Williams, he's way back there. But anyway, he was a great player. Played
Yeah.
college ball, and then
I believe his son's my chiropractor. Mark and Steve.
Okay.
Steve is
okay.
his daddy. They're all good
Yes,
athletes.
yeah, they were great athletes.
Every one of them.
Yeah, every one of them. But anyway, he was coaching there, and the Golston boy, Robert Golston, whose father and grandfather grew up out there on my grandfather's farm. So they walked in the gym over there, and we were going to scrimmage. And Coach Williams come in, I hollered at him. And I said, "Hey, where's Golston?" He said, "Coach, he won't come to Polk County." I said, "What?" He said, "He won't come." He was the only black on their team at that time. I said, "Why not?" I said, "We ain't going to fight. We're going to play basketball." But he wouldn't come. That was just that. My daughter played basketball at Cleveland State. And they were going to play somebody down in North Georgia, I think down there at Reinhardt down there. And so they came through Polk County. Well, they obviously had a lot of black athletes on their men's team. And they knew my daughter. They hollered at her as they were going through Polk County and said, "Hey, Lowery, where do they hang black people at over here?" And she just laughed. It's because, you know. But that was just a sign of the time. And they used to, here's something else people don't know about Polk County. They used to have a black school in Polk County. They used to have a black church in Polk County. They used to own that land. I don't know if you know where Burgess Feed and Supply is.
Yeah.
They owned that land right there, right in
The
that
V?
section. The V.
The
The
V.
V. And there was a black school right across the road of the highway from there. They called it King School.
On the east or the west?
On the east side, towards the mountains. There used to be a black school, big school. And they bought them out. But I never forget when my son was just little. He was just a small boy. And we went to Benton one day. And I was going to stop at the post office. It used to be right there on the highway. You probably don't remember it. But I pulled in front of it, and we went in and got our mail and got back out. And he was standing up. We didn't have car seats. But anyway,
You had the old.
yeah. You do it like that when
Yeah.
you stop. But anyway, he started pointing. "Daddy, daddy, daddy, daddy," like that. And I said, "What is it, son?" And I looked to my left, and there was a black man in a car right there. He never had seen one that close. And of course, he wasn't but 2 or 3 years old. But it was just kind of, like I said, different ways. I used to tell my students, I used to teach them because I knew some of them had been brought up, their families were racist. I knew they were. And I tried to give them some advice. I said, "Now look, some of you are going to leave Polk County. you're going to go to college, or you're going to go to work somewhere where there are going to be some minorities, blacks, Hispanics, others. I said, let me give you some advice. I said, treat them as individuals. If they're good to you, you be good to them. Take them as individuals. Don't stereotype them. You know the stereotypes. You know how it used to be a lot worse than it is. I said, treat them as individuals. I said, they are individuals, you know. So I tried to give them advice because I knew they'd be moving on. I said, now, if you treat them bad, they're going to treat you bad. If you're racist to them, and I'd use this term, because used to in Polk County, people in Bradley County, McMinn, whatever said, everybody in Polk County is a redneck. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, I said, I don't consider myself a redneck. I don't want to be called that. And
would that be considered racist,
sure,
saying somebody's a redneck?
Well, not racist as much as maybe, I don't know how to say this, elitist type thing that I'm better than you.
Like saying somebody's fat, that's not considered racist?
Well, that's a derogatory term to depict somebody, which I don't think is right. You know, you're going to offend them.
If somebody tells me I'm short, it makes me a little mad.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't call them tall.
Yeah, they ain't many tall, Joe. Well, I guess they are if they're tall enough. But I never did have to worry about that. But
let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Let me tell you about Gobbles Automotive. They're on North Lee Highway, just past Captain D's. They're family owned, they're family operated. My whole family uses them. They've stood the test of time. They will do you a good job. Give them a try. They're no problem.
Well, I can tell you one story about Copper Hill, and since you mentioned it. One time up our principal was looking for an English teacher. So he looked in the paper, you know, put an ad in the paper, we need an English teacher, and gave him all the details. And so they corresponded back with a letter and gave him the resume, so to speak, maybe 4 resumes, but application, whatever, and, you know, and it looked great. Graduated from a good school, had good references and everything. So they said, okay, school starts so-and-so, be here on this date. Said, I'll meet you at the bus station. Well, you can see what's coming. So they get to the bus station and people start getting off, and the principal there's waiting on them. And everybody goes, and here comes the black lady off the bus. And he says, are you so-and-so? And she said, Ms. So-and-so. And she said, yes, I am. He said, ma'am, I'm sorry. You might as well get back on this bus. You won't be accepted here. And so she did. She had to. At that time, it would have caused too much trouble. I remember I was teaching at Polk County High School when the first, what we would call black, came to the school there. 2 brothers. Their mother had married a black man. And they were coming to school there. And everybody, all the teachers were apprehensive about the acceptance of them. But they were good boys. They were good athletes. Didn't give any problems. In 4 years they were there. And they were just accepted. Just accepted. And you know what I tried to tell them, and here's what I think. I think young people, most young people, even today, are more tolerant, even back then. And it's usually outsiders that cause the problem. You know, the parents or some outsiders, because kids you know, they're pretty tolerant of people. They kind of take people as they are. It's been my experience of taking people as they are, and that kids do. And here I was coaching basketball over there. We played Charleston. Charleston had some good players. Most of them were black. And we went to a basketball camp in the summer. Back then, you used to go to camp for a week. You stayed at the school. You played 3 or 4 games a day for 4 or 5 days. Well, when we went to Sail Creek, this basketball camp, they put Charleston with their black players right next to us. I said, oh no. That's what I thought beforehand, because I knew I had some racist guys that had been brought up that way. I said, oh no, it's going to cause problems. Before the week was over, those boys had got to know each other, and my players would stay in their room. I'd have to go in there and get them out to play the game.
Yeah.
They had got to see each other as basketball players and as young people. We played them 3 times that year. Every one of them were close games. Every one of them, 3 or 4 point games, just really contested and competitive. They beat us 3 times by just a few points. There was never an incident in the game because they knew them and knew they were just like they were. They were young men, basketball players. And like I said, they beat us all 3 times. But they wasn't.
And Polk County's not like that anymore, really, at all, that I can tell.
No, well, no. Don't assume that. This year, and I love Polk County. I was born and raised there. I love it. I taught school there for 30 years. I love it. And I don't want to live anywhere else. I'm living in a 100-year-old house, but what the best thing is, I can throw a rock where I was born and raised. But if you remember this protest we had, not this summer, but the summer before, you know, with the Black Lives Matter.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they had an
That's right,
incident
yeah.
up at Benton.
I'd ride my bicycle through there one day,
Okay.
and I noticed them over there.
Yes. There's still I'm not sure, well, politics played a little bit in that.
Sure, yeah.
And a little bit in that, but I say racism too played a little bit part of it, even though there wasn't any blacks on the other side. But they're still, just like they are anywhere. Just like they are anywhere. And if you remember your history, when the migration of African Americans to the north for jobs, there was resentment there in the north.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, for sure. And it was partly race. A lot of them say, well, they're going to take our jobs. That's another thing. But I don't think racism, and surely it was in the South, obviously, by the history and all that. But people are racist in all parts of the world. You know, and you get that in Africa, you get it in India, and you get China, you get it everywhere. You know, where it's not, obviously in a lot of places it's not black and white. It's one group against another, but it's still racist. You could consider it that.
And was it that way 100 years prior to the Indians? That's what they were against. They were racist against the Indians.
Yes.
What was it before that? Something? I mean, even the Bible, they would go in and...
Well, the Samaritans, the Jews hated the Samaritans.
They would go in and kill everybody in the whole place.
Yeah, the Jews hated the Samaritans. That's why the Jesus' apostles were so surprised when they came back from getting food, and there was Jesus talking to a Samaritan woman. You know, and she was a woman, you know, they didn't have any rights either. But they were surprised why he was talking to her.
He was very liberal, wasn't he?
Oh, well, in that sense, yeah. And in that sense. But he said, you know, they couldn't go to Jerusalem to worship like the rest of the Jews could. They couldn't go because they were outcasts, you know. Just kind of like the Gentiles were. They couldn't go in the temple. If you wasn't a Jew, you couldn't go into the temple. and worship. So, and that's, not getting too
Well, that
deep
get out of human nature
in
the next.
theology. If it hadn't been for Jesus, we wouldn't have a change because he came for all people.
That's right.
Jews
first and then the Gentiles.
Yeah, Jews first and then the Gentiles. He brought us all in.
What will it be 100 years from now? Because studying history, like you've done, has what benefit other than to help the future? Yeah, if you go forward 100 years, if we study the history and we study it so that we can make things better for the future, what will be it in the future? I mean, we can't imagine, can we? We can sit here for the next 5 hours and we're not going to be able to imagine. I mean, here I've got a smartphone, you've got a flip phone, and then before long you'll have a smartphone.
I'll have to.
And mine will be. I mean, so we can't keep up with it. All we can do is live.
Well, are you talking about the human side of it or the technological side of it?
I think the technological side is the human side. It's just a manifestation of it.
Okay.
Because humans just want to make things better and faster, and they don't know. If I was an alien and I was looking down at our race, I would sum it up by saying all they want to do is make things better and create.
Yeah, now, but here's what I've tried to tell people. Is all what we call progress beneficial? Is all what we call progress, and we've got this big progressive movement now in our country and obviously in our politics. I am kind of leaning to the belief that all progress is not good. And let me illustrate this. I grew up in Ocoee in the late 50s, early 60s. I wouldn't change where I grew up and when for any time in history. And I'm going to kind of contrast today's growing up of kids, and I was in the kid business as an educator. I don't think it's progress. All this technological stuff, our kids don't have any social skills, a lot of them. What has that there in all the electronic gizmos that we've invented doing to this generation and future generations? They are not going to have any interpersonal relationships. It's going to be harder for them.
I think another thing it's taken away is people's ability to have their own opinion. Because you get on Google and it says coffee's good for you, or coffee, then you get on it and coffee's bad for you.
Yeah.
People don't have the ability to say, coffee's good for me, I like it. And just let it go at that.
Yeah. So,
but yet they're saying, I'm not supposed to like it. So they don't have the ability anymore to think for themselves or to make their own opinion and live with their own opinion.
Okay, just what we're doing here today. Mm-hmm. I'm a YouTuber. This is late to me.
Yeah.
Late to me. And I know you're on it and everything. And I thought this on politics. The worst thing that happened to American politics is the 24-hour news cycle.
I remember when it started.
The worst thing that happened to it. And even on YouTube, and I like it, what's a lot of it's on there. I know it's not all, but it's one side criticizing the other. It's and there's no that side is bad. I don't care what they do. It's bad. We can't condone anything they do. American wasn't built on that. American political system is built on one word: compromise. And
John,
we can't.
Did you remember the Waltons? They'd get on the internal. They'd listen to the news, but they wouldn't let it form their opinion.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
We're letting it now form our opinion.
Yes, it is.
It's just for thinking and help us to think, but we should be able to say, no, I like coffee and I'm going to keep drinking coffee.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm saying that it's hurting our country. It's hurting our country. Do you trust the government? No,
I don't
nobody trusts the government anymore.
There's no saying that says don't trust anybody except your mother and don't ask your daddy about your mother.
Yeah. And see,
that's a terrible joke, isn't it?
We don't trust the government. And here's
We
what
might edit that.
And you know what I tell them? We've got too many politicians and not any statesmen. We've got too many politicians and there's not any statesmen.
Lincoln was a statesman. He'd go from state to state and he would preach his opinion. He'd try to explain his opinion. And
yes, and I'm telling you, you can't vote against your party now. Or what? Or they'll exclude you and they'll run somebody to make sure you get beat next time. So politics has got to the point, and I'm trying to keep an open mind. I don't agree with a lot of things that our current president's doing, but he's still our president. You know what the Bible says?
The old timers used to
pray for your leaders.
It didn't say turn against them.
Right. And like I said, I don't agree with his policies, hardly any, but he is our president. I respect the office. If he came to my house or come on sitting right here, I'd still call him Mr. President. Mm-hmm. That's a title of respect just for the office now. Mm-hmm. But our country is so divided, and it's because I think it started with the 24-hour news cycle, and these major what they call them, the mass media.
Yeah.
And that's it. But I don't think it's good for a country just like this technology. When I grew up, and probably when you grew up, you know what our parents told us when we were out of school in the summer? Get out of this house. You ain't watching that TV. You ain't watching it. Get outside and do something. Be active. We've got a lot of people in our country, and even in Polk County, who we're isolated, obviously. They're homeschooling their kids. They're homeschooling their kids, and their kids don't interact, a lot of them now, with people their age, their social skills, and I think that's bad for our country. In this pandemic, when they shut down the schools,
they made it acceptable.
Yes, they made it acceptable. You're right.
Or it made it acceptable.
Yeah, it did, and I hope that we can get away from that. And I would get homeschooled kids, say, that been homeschooled for a couple of years, they came in. I mean, I hope this is the exception and not the rule. They were way behind the other kids.
Now they're having homeschool students get together with other homeschool students so they can interact. Why not just go to school?
Yeah.
I mean,
but and you know, I was in education for 42 years. I saw it change. I taught world history. And
Lincoln was homeschooled.
Yes.
So we can't argue just that point.
Yeah, but he was self-educated. He was motivated.
Yeah.
Here's what and I hate to get off on this tangent. People watching this are going to say, "Oh, he's just an old timer. It was better back in his time." You know.
No, I don't like getting that.
Okay. And I tell them, you know what they're doing now? The new wave in education is they don't call teachers teachers. They call them facilitators. This thing, well, you ain't got one, he's got one. A computer, the lessons are put on computers. You know, they program them in, and the kids get on their own personal computer, and they do the work. They do the work. That's
Instead
it.
of the teacher getting up and having the
Yes.
discussions,
Yes.
and having a blackboard.
Yes, yeah.
The blackboard's gone.
Yes.
Maybe that's...
They call them whiteboards
Whiteboard,
now.
yeah,
They
yeah.
can do that, but still, that's gone too.
Yeah.
And so And I know teachers, if they watch this, say, well, he's just an old fuddy-duddy. It bypassed him, and it probably did. But some kids need somebody to try to motivate them. A computer can't motivate you. Now, those are great.
Now that's a good point you got.
Those things are good for the self-motivated kids. They can go at their own pace, and if they want to go ahead, let them. But here's what most public education teachers are taught to do. Teach to the middle. That means you're going to lose a few of the better kids, and you're going to hopefully bring a lot of the lower kids into the middle. Because if you got 30 kids in the classroom, which is not that many now, but I've had that, you can't be individual, so you got to teach to the middle and try to help these go
It's a nuance that you got to learn, I'm assuming.
Yes.
You're not just teaching to the middle, you're the smart people, maybe you're the shy people, you're calling on the smart people.
Yes.
It's
a
gift.
It is. And
that's an educator, not just a
teacher.
Yeah.
And you know what? I used to, we used to have career fairs at school, and they'd ask some of the teachers to speak on education. If kids were, we'd divide them up. Somebody wanted to be going to engineering and have the math people talk to them, and if somebody wanted to go into building trades like yours, you're going to have the building trades teacher talk. Well, when they'd ask me to go into education, the first thing I'd tell them, I'd say, now look, if you're considering education for career, if you don't like people, don't go into education. And I used to get some new teachers coming into the profession, and they used to give you what they call mentor teachers to help them, assimilate into teaching. Tell them. First thing they'd ask is, we're not making enough money. That's the first thing they'd ask. You know what I'd tell them? I said, now wait a minute here. You went 4 years of college to become a teacher, and you didn't investigate the pay? That's on you. Yeah. They would write about the salary right off hand. And I'd tell them, some teachers got into it that didn't like kids. And I'd say, now wait a minute here. You went 4 years of school, and you don't like people, you don't like kids, you're going to be teaching 130 kids a day, and you don't like them? I mean, if you can't interact with them, and that when I retired, that's what I miss the most. The interaction between me and the kids. Of course, now I had a unique thing. I taught mostly in Polk County. I knew I may have went to school. I went to school with their parents or grandparents. I taught their brothers or sisters. So I had a unique thing there.
Did you have a kind of a sense of obligation more so since you were from that area?
Yes, I did. I wanted to do the best job, and you know what I told them? I told the kids the first day, I can't give you an education, but I can't keep you from getting one if you want it. I can't give you one, but I can't keep you from getting it.
How do you teach motivation?
Well, I had some real good kids, and then of course, I had some kids that weren't motivated. I had some good kids that I always tried to say, if I could tell they were really intellectual, really intelligent, but they come from a background that didn't have enough money or anything, I'd take them aside and I said, look, you're really intelligent. You can do anything you want to. Don't let people drag you down just because you don't have any money or the means to go to college or anything. I said, there's scholarships out there, there's grants out there. You're smart enough to go on and be successful in doing what you want to do. I wouldn't do it in front of other kids. I'd just take them aside and say, what's your plans after school? What do you want to do? And I'd tell them, I'd say, you're too smart here. You can do anything you want to do. Don't let not having the means keep you from doing it. And I'll give you a perfect example. There was a boy in school over there, come from nothing. He come from nothing. His family was broken, everything, and he was my manager on the basketball team. Good little kid, didn't have nothing. When we go on trips and we stop to eat, he didn't have any money. Me or my assistant coach slipped him a little, eat money. What he did after he graduated, he worked at a convenience store here all night long, went to Tennessee Wesleyan in the daytime, completed his college, got him a college degree, been teaching school over there for about 25 years.
In Polk County.
In Polk County. He worked, he didn't have nothing. And he's one of my best friends. If I call him in the middle of the night at 3 in the morning and said, hey, I need you down here to help me do something, he'd come. But he made something when he didn't have nothing. I mean, and I admire him for that. He ain't a perfect person, ain't no perfect people. But he made something out. He's got 2 children. One of them's teaching school in Dayton. The other's going to UTC. And they're smart. His wife's a teacher over there.
He could have gone the other way.
Yeah, he could have. Mm-hmm. He could have. And I see a lot of them do that. But I always, try to help them. Even those that come in there and cause trouble at school. Mm-hmm. I'd tell them, you know who they are because you hear a name called to the office every day, or you hear about it. Yeah. I'd call them, I'd take them aside and I'd say, now look, I know you don't like school. It's obvious you hate it here. But I said, why don't you're going to have to be here till you're 17. I said, you're making it hard on yourself. I said, get in here, do the best you can, don't cause trouble. And I said, it'll be easier for you. But, if you develop a rapport with students, it's easier to try to give them advice. I always tried to talk to them, and I was interested in it because I knew most of their families. And so I miss that rapport.
So you think people will take advice better if you have rapport?
Oh, it's obvious. It's obvious.
And until you have that rapport, you might as well forget giving them advice.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen.
No, it ain't going to happen.
It's not going to happen with me if I don't know anybody.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem. Let me tell you about Gobbles Automotive. They're on North Lee Highway, just past Captain D's. They're family owned, they're family operated. My whole family uses them. They've stood the test of time. They will do you a good job. Give them a try. They're no problem.
I tried to give good advice to kids. I taught American history, and I had the general population. Well, we had an honors history. And I had a boy in that class, and I knew him, knew his family, and he was a good guy, and I'd coached him. And he'd come in my class the first day. And I said, what are you doing in here? He said, what are you talking about, Coach? And I said, you don't need to be in here. You need to be in that honors class. I know how smart you are. I said, you need to be over there. I said, I don't mind that. In fact, I wish you'd stay here. I like you. But I said, you need to go over there. And he did. It's the best thing to happen to him. And I said, I like the kid. I still talk to him. He's coaching baseball down at McCauley now. And he's a good kid. And we had a good relationship. I told him, I said, get over there where you learn more. I said, I'm going to have to teach kind of the middle here, an average student that's not going to spend a lot of time. And see, I taught history, and every kid hated history. You know why? They don't like to read.
Well, they think it's not going. Yeah, it's because it's all reading.
It's all reading.
Yeah.
It's all reading, and they hated it. And I still I see some of my ex-students, and they'll come up to me and say, "Mr. Lowery," said, "Yeah." I said, I can't remember their names. I remember their faces because I had too many. And I asked them. I said, "What are you doing now?" And they tell me, and I said, well, it's good, you know. And it's that rapport that really motivated me. And here I was lucky. You love your job?
For the most part.
For the most part. And you know, I never dreaded getting up and going to school. I never dreaded it. It wasn't a job to me. And I tried to tell my students that. I said, now look, when you decide on a career, make it something you like to do, and it won't be a job.
I think there's some value in not liking what you do to be good at it.
Well, yeah.
You almost have to, in a sense, you almost have to hate it to be good at it.
Well, that wasn't my case. I've had jobs now. I moved around quite a bit, and I made some terrible decisions on jobs. And I knew I wasn't going to be there but 1 year, but I still had kids that I could relate to. And I didn't like the place. I liked doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
I didn't like the place. And I moved, but, you know, kids, I used to be the same way. And when I was in the summer, I hated to go back to school. And as a teacher, I hated to go back. But after I got back, I was glad it was back, you know. So I tried to tell kids, get you something you love to do and you won't hate it. And a lot of them did. And my daughter's a teacher. She teaches elementary math in Monroe, Louisiana. And
That's where Duck Dynasty is.
yes,
Isn't it?
I went
Does
to
she
their
know
place. No, but her kids knew their kids. They, you know, they had some kids on the show, and we went to their place, and it's kind of funny. My grandson was playing baseball down there, baseball all-star game, so we went down to see him play. And I asked the guy there about my age, sitting there, I said, do you know the Robinsons, those guys on Duck Dynasty? And he said, yeah, I know them. And I said, well, how are they? He said, they ain't nothing but rednecks. And, you know, that's how they depicted themselves. And,
You know, I
went to church to come and speak about it. I went to church at West Ferry Church of Christ, and they were there.
That's right. Well, that's where they go.
That's where they go, Jace and
Could you
Si.
see them from a distance?
No, one of them sat right in front of me. I didn't talk to him because everybody else was, but yeah, I was as far as me.
I had a friend of mine said he went to their place on a Sunday, and this is a true story. He told me for it to be true. He said that he went there, and it was a Sunday, and it was all closed, so he pulled around back to go to the bathroom, and he said there was Willie washing his car behind the building.
Is that right? Where they sold their stuff?
Yeah, he said that for the truth, said he was washing his car.
Yeah, we went to their place and they was cars, and when I go places like that, I always look at state car tags.
Yeah.
And there was Tennessee, Missouri, Kansas, there were all sorts of them in there buying their products, you know. And
I'm gonna go there one day.
You ought to
How
go.
far a drive is it?
Yeah, well, it's about a 9-hour drive.
So you'd fly?
I don't fly, I drive, because my wife, we just drive down. In fact, my grandson's a senior there at the high school, and we're going to go
Monroe. Down. My wife's from Monroe, Louisiana.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, she went to the same school they went to, I think.
Neville? Was it Neville?
I don't remember.
Well, that's where my grandson goes. It's the oldest school there. Neville
she
High
went
School.
there for like a year or two.
Oh, did she? Yeah. I like Monroe. It's
Has politics changed, or is it all the same?
Well, I don't know. But I can tell you about Polk County politics, which is interesting. I try to tell my students that. It's nationally known, but it's not for a good thing. But you want me to tell that story? It's kind of fun. You've probably read about the Battle of Athens, haven't you?
Yes.
That's when the veterans coming back from World War II, the McMinn and Polk County was controlled by political machines. And if they've written a great book on on the Battle of Athens, you ought to read it. It's fascinating. And there's a young man, and he's interviewed me because my uncle was involved in it, writing a book on Polk County politics, what happened. So here's what happened. I've already told you my grandfather had a business. He had a cotton business. He had cotton gins in Ocoee, Chatsworth, Charleston, and I think Delano. And so all these old farmers, and that's what the main cash crop was, would bring their cotton in to gin. And, you know, he'd pay them for the cotton, and they'd buy all their kids' clothes and stuff for the year. And, you know, in fact, and I experienced this, in October, schools let out in Polk County, and I'm sure they did in Bradley County, for 2 weeks, what we call cotton picking time. The kids had to go home and help their family pick the cotton for their family to sell, where they could buy shoes and clothes for the school year. So the political machine in Polk County, the Biggs machine, it was the Cantrell machine in McMinn County. Well, the elections were rigged. They were corrupt. You know what the old saying is in Polk County still today?
What?
You know what the price of a vote is in Polk County?
Pint of liquor?
Yeah, half pint of whiskey. And they used to give them that for their vote. And you know what else in Polk County they used to say? And this is funny, but they did this maybe in the last one. You don't lose your right to vote in Polk County if you're dead. They would vote dead people that would still be on the rolls. And this actually happened in Polk County. They had more absentee ballots in Polk County than they did in Shelby County, Memphis. They had over 6,000 absentee ballots one time in Polk County. They ain't but about 10,000 on the roll, voter rolls, or maybe a little bit more. But anyway, so here these veterans come back and see this corruption. And here's how my grandfather got into it. Now, there's been 3 generations of the Lowerys in the Tennessee State Legislature, consecutive. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my uncle. They've all been in there for 3 times, 3 generations. It ended with mine. But anyway, these sheriff of Polk County, it was a Biggs. He controlled it. Do you know in Polk County State, I'm not Polk County, but Tennessee State government, the most powerful individual or elected office in the counties used to be the sheriff. It was had the most power. But they were stopping my grandfather's trucks that was hauling the cotton and picking up just little old things and charging them like you got a light out here, you got tail lights and that. Well, they stopped one of my uncles and they'd been doing it, harassing them. And they stopped him and 2 deputies walked up there and had their guns on their side and said, "Get down from that truck." He said, "I'm not getting down." And he said, "You either get down or we're going to shoot that thing out from under you." So that's what it was. They wanted the veterans coming back now, the veterans, don't take no offense, they'd been fighting them Germans and those Japanese. They weren't afraid of these guys. So they got my uncle involved. He was a veteran. He's an Army captain in artillery. And he served in North Africa and Italy. And they wanted him to stay in. They said, "If you stay in," "you'll get more rank quickly." He said, "I'm not going to do it. I'm going home to help my daddy in the cotton business." And so, and here's what's funny, and it's just kind of a side note. He came home after 3 years of war, got off the bus at 4 in the morning at Ocoee. They come and got him at 8 o'clock and told him, said, "Come down here. We need you to help down here in the gin and cotton." So he didn't get much rest. But anyway, they were going to form their own political party. And they had the organizational meeting. It had to be secret. Because if the Biggs had found out the machine, they might probably arrested some or broke it up. Way up in the mountains, back up in there in Reliance and Greasy Creek. My uncle tells me about this meeting. said they drove in a car as far as they could up an old logging road, and they couldn't get no further, and they had to walk on up to where they were holding it with lanterns and
That's how secret
stuff.
they had
That's
to
how
be.
secret it was.
What were they going to call it?
This is funny. They call it GGL, the Good Government League.
I've heard that name.
And you know what? But later on, what they called it, the Good Gunslingers League.
Oh,
Because it was violent. But anyway, he said they started at the meeting, and the leader of it was a guy above the mountain named Bob Barkley, very outspoken, then and kind of a rabble rouser. But anyway, they got up there and they were discussing what they were going to do, Well, some of the people attending apparently had got into the moonshine. And some of them said, let's just kill them all. And, they were veterans used to fighting. So that would have been, if you ever read about the Battle of Athens, I mean, it's a wonder they hadn't had 100 killed, because bullets were flying everywhere up there that night at the courthouse. And the sheriff was in there. He was the cantrell, head of the machine. They wanted him to come out. He was in there, and you know what he told? He told them, his deputies and everything.
Right.
He said, if I go out there, they'll kill me. And he wouldn't go. But anyway, so my uncle, who was a college graduate, he graduated from UT, was captain in the Army. He told him, he said, now look, if y'all are going to try to kill people, I don't want no part of it. He said, if we organize, we can vote them out. We can vote them out. So he ran for the representative to the state legislature from Polk and Bradley, and I think maybe it may have just been Polk and Bradley. And so he won. He won. And his daddy, who had been over there, my grandfather, told him he was going to go over there and try to pass some bills to take away control of the election commission and all. If you had to control the election commission, you could control the election. And pass some bills to do that. But he told his son, he said, son, go over there and do what you have to do and get out of there. And my uncle told me this specifically. When he went to Nashville, and if you know anything about Nashville, and I don't, but the state legislature, they had one hotel called Andrew Johnson right in the middle of town that all the state legislature stayed in while they were over there in session. He said he was over there the first week, and he got a phone call from down in the lobby. Said, Mr. Lowery, can I come up and talk to you? And he didn't recognize him. He said, yes, come on up. So he went up, and the guy walked in. He was from Polk County. He pulled an envelope out and threw it on the table. Had money in it. Told him, said, if you won't do anything over here to hurt the Biggs machine, said, this is the down payment. My uncle picked it up and handed it back to him and said, no. Said, I come over here to do what I was elected to do. So they were trying to buy him off. Mm-hmm. So, not wanting to get too into the details here, but when they had an election, it was contested, obviously, because the machine wasn't going to give up power easily. Nobody gives up power easily. And it was so contested. My uncle, who knew the governor, his name was Gordon Browning, he called him and said, you better send in the National Guard. They're trying to steal this election. We want it. So, the governor's the only one can bring the National Guard in. So he activated a unit from Athens. They came in to, get all the ballot boxes and everything and secure them. And, where they can recount them or see if there's any irregularities or whatever. So here's what my uncle said. They stationed off all the roads leading into Benton, searched every car coming in. And you know what they did? They said they took all the weapons out of those cars and said there was a pile of weapons on the courthouse square, 5, 6 foot high.
And about what year was this?
40, I think it was 48. 48. Say they'd been back a couple of years, and they didn't like all that corruption. They were controlling everything. And there's an old saying in Polk County said there's a lot of river bottom farms been bought out of the courthouse. You understand that they had stole the money, but anyway, and here's my uncle told me this was true. Said that the National Guard colonel with 2 soldiers, one on each side. The county jail used to be, I don't know if you know much about Benton, if you turn left at the red light and go that way, and there's a big curve right there, that's where the Polk County Jail was, right there. Old building, man, it was in terrible shape.
Next to the health department, right?
No, well, it was the city hall for a while, but they moved it out time. But they said it was kind of like a old gun west gunfight. The sheriff and 2 deputies were walking this way, and that National Guard colonel and his 2 soldiers were walking this way. So they met right there in the middle of the street. And the sheriff said, "I'm the sheriff of Polk County." And that old colonel said, "You used to be the sheriff of Polk County. Give me those guns." Now, whether that happened or not, but he said it did. And because, the National Guard had the power there because the governor had sent them in.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, we had some political murders in Polk County. One governor of the state, and I know you've heard of him, Frank Clement, he campaigned, one of his campaign promises was to solve all the unsolved killings in Polk County. And I never forget, as a boy, in the summer, me and my brothers were playing ball outside, and his car rolled up, and he said, "Here," he handed us some flyers out, said, "So much reward for information leading to the arrest of whoever committed the murders of so-and-so." So, it was a bad time. We made Life magazine, Time magazine, because I've read them. One of the articles, the title was, "Polk County Draws Its Guns." And all those guns, and I show you pictures of people in the courthouse, the one same courthouse, 2 men sitting on a 3rd-story window with shotguns laid across their lap. And my uncle tells me this, that the GGL, in order to get the firepower that they needed, they came over here to the National Guard Armory in Cleveland and stole a 50 caliber machine gun.
The good guys did.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've seen a 50 caliber shell?
Yeah.
That thing's that long.
Yeah.
You know where they put one of them? At the Ocoee School. They voted in the schools back then, and they still do. And they set it up facing the Ocoee School, 2 men manning it. And he said they got to drinking, and he said it's a wonder they hadn't shot the whole building up because of that. Them shells, I mean, I've seen them.
Yeah, they're
like
long.
that. They're long, and, they do a lot of damage. So, man, there was a lot of, they ambushed 2 deputies up in Copper Hill and killed 2 of them. The guys, they got ambushed, and they tried to crawl under the car to keep from getting killed, but they still got killed. And there was a man who, and I taught his granddaughter in school, right there on where the old high school was up on the hill. He walked out of his house one summer night, going to take some garbage out, and what he had done, from what I can gather, and I read a master's thesis written by a Vanderbilt University student on all the political goings on in Polk County, about that thick. But anyway, He walked out to put the trash out. Somebody stepped out of the shadows. It's getting dusky dark and shot him with a shotgun. Killed him. Killed him. Ain't never been caught. Ain't none of them ever been caught. And I asked my uncle one time, we were riding and he was in his, I guess, early 80s. I said, do you know who killed, his name was August Lewis. Do you know who killed August Lewis? He said, I'm not for sure, but he said, you give me 3 guesses and I could get him. And I asked him one time, I said, why don't you write a book about that? Because his mind was sharp. He died when he was 88. His mind was sharp as a tack. I said, why don't you write a book about that? I said, it's got all the makings for a bestseller. I said, it's got mystery, it's got corruption, it's got intrigue, and I said, we could probably throw a little sex in there if we wanted to.
Or love
that
anyway,
would make
right?
it, yeah. And he said, well, I could, but said, a lot of those people are still alive. And he said, I don't want to hurt them. He said, I don't want to hurt them. And, well, he was elected that term, and then the next term, same thing happened. A lot of contested election. Well, they took it to the chancellor, and the chancellor voided the election, his election, for irregularities. Now, the man I told you about is writing the book. He's done a lot of research. He's done a lot of research. And I don't know if he was just appeasing me and my sister, because my uncle raised us. He raised us. And he went back to school when he was after all this happened, to get his teaching degree, because cotton was gone and everything. And he went back and he taught at Bradley for about 20 years. And he taught a lot of people I know over here. In fact, when I tell them my name, you can't be that. I said, no, that was my uncle. And but anyway, they removed him from his second term. But he later was chairman of the school board, and when he was in the legislature over there, didn't used to have free textbooks. He passed it where Polk County would have free textbooks for their students. And he was really believed in education. In fact, all 4 of us who was under his tutelage more than anything were all college graduates. Well, my brother liked about a quarter. He should have, because he had more talent than anybody's. But, out of 4 people, one of them's more talented that could do anything. But he was involved in it. But I won't finish this story, that the man that's investigating all of it, he calls me every once in a while, and he even got a ad in the Polk County News. If you have any information about that time period, I'd like to interview you, and you can remain anonymous.
And who is this guy?
I'd
like to talk to him.
I can get you his name. I can't remember his name, but he's, like I said, I told him all that my uncle told me.
Yeah.
And he said during his research, he said, I can't never find any evidence that your uncle did anything wrong, but the other people in the GGL did, So
Did the GGL, it finally just didn't work?
Yeah, well, what it did, it stayed alive till the early 60s. And then it just gradually morphed back into the other parties. And see, it's kind of funny in Polk County. It used to be if you wasn't a Democrat, then you might as well not run. But now, since the national political parties have evolved and merged, you can't get elected as a Democrat now because it's voted Republican for the last probably 3 or 4 or 5 presidential elections, And I had a woman ask me the other day, that one of the ladies that works for her, she's an elected official, says she's wanting to run for office. Can she win as a Democrat? I said, no. Our county executive right now, county mayor, you know what he ran on?
What?
Independent. But guess what he did as soon as he won? He switched back to Republican. Because Republican, there was a
You shouldn't have to side with one or the other. You should just get up and give your opinion of what you think you should do.
Right, but you know
and
what the joke was in Polk County?
What?
When the Republicans hold a county convention, they held it in a phone booth.
Yeah.
And my best friend I grew up with, great guy, he was a Republican. But we were living in time there when it was all Democrats. You know what he was mad about? When he went in to vote, they always asked him, do you want to vote in the Democrat primary or the Republican primary? He didn't want to say because he didn't want nobody to know he was Republican.
Yeah, I don't like them asking me that either. What does it matter?
Yeah, but he didn't like it, and you know, I hate to. You get into personal stuff on this. I don't really like to do that. My uncle was a die-hard Democrat. He's a die-hard. I mean, my grandfather was a delegate in 1932 at the Democrat National Convention in Chicago where they nominated Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You know how I know that?
How?
He brought back a walking stick for his wife that had it on it, engraved on the walking stick. Came, and I wish we still had it. It'd be a real, memento. But Polk County history, and just to tell you how bad, I guess how bad it was. I'd tell my students this. So one day a student brought in some papers. He said, here, look at these. And I looked at them, and they were ballots from 1952. I said, where'd you find these? There's a bunch of them back in this old barn that we own. So somebody had stole them. And, this actually happened out at Turtletown. You mentioned Turtletown.
Yeah.
You used to vote at Turtletown School. And so here's what was going to happen. They had it planned that after the polls closed and they were going to do the voting, before the voting started, somebody was going to run down there and pull the main switch. The whole place go dark, and they were going to grab the ballot box and run with it, steal it, and then just go out and stuff it. Excuse me. Well, the plan worked till the lights went out, and they heard one shot. And somebody run down there and puts the light switch up. A bunch of ballots on the floor. Box was open. I heard a man lay shot. And we're a unique family. We're divided geographically by the mountains. They call it above the mountains, below the mountains. That's the way it is. And they had hired a taxi driver from Copper Hill to bring the ballot boxes down to Benton after the polls closed, where they counted them. They counted them down at Benton, the county seat. So the old road, and you probably hadn't been around it, it used to wind around what they call Boyd's Gap up there. It's a big sharp curve around that. So when he started around that curve, they ambushed him, shot the taxi full of holes. Miraculously, this guy didn't get hit. He put the car in the ditch and jumped out, and they said he ran all the way back to Copper Hill, which is 2 or 3 miles.
Through the woods, I guess.
Where they could steal the ballot boxes. And I'm interested if this guy writes this book and
if he picks up on all that.
Piece it together. It's so much to it that it's going to be hard, and he's been trying to research it for a year.
I'd like to get his name.
Yeah, I can get it to you, but he calls me every once in a while. Like I said, he put the ad in the paper where he could try to get people to come in and tell him, and he told them. And I did talk to a guy that said he knew who killed August Lewis, the guy up there. What made people didn't like him is he had started out as a Democrat. He'd switched over to the GTL, and then he went back to the Democrats, and which made, obviously, the GGL mad. Yeah. And he said that this person that he thought shot him left the county right after that and went somewhere else. Just left because he was probably afraid somebody get him if they knew he hadn't done it. Now, there was never any evidence, but he was there at the time. One more story. This is the way it was. They were all in the courthouse. See, the GGL occupied the courthouse with their guns. Armed guys at the doors. Wasn't going to let nobody in where the county commission couldn't meet. So they were all there one night, and my uncle was there, and there was a guy come up and said, Mr. Lowery said, we need you to come down here and move your car. You've got somebody blocked in. And my uncle said he started to leave, and I said, wait a minute, it's dark. You ain't going down there. Said, it may be an ambush. Said, give me your keys. We'll go down there and move your car. They were afraid, you know, that he would have been shot. It was that type of deal. I mean, I tried to teach my students that, and I wouldn't mention a lot of names because I knew there were some family members might have been involved in it. So it was, I tried to teach my kids, my students about that, and you know, I'd mention it, and I said, now, as a history teacher, and I knew they hated it, I'd try to say this. And you know, there's an old question if you're a history teacher. Does history make men or do men make history? I'm of the belief that men make history. I'd say, what's so interesting about history is it's about people. It's about people. You know, how people interact with one another, just like countries. Leaders get along, it helps the relations. If they don't get along, it hurts the relations. See, that's what made it so good with Roosevelt and Churchill. They got along so good that it, you know, they helped each other. And so I tried to get them interested in that, you know, just like Adolf Hitler. You know what he wanted to be as a young man? He wanted to be an architect. He applied to architect school twice, and he was turned down twice. That changed history. See, if he'd got into architect school, and he had drawings, I don't know, you're of that descent, they've got things of his drawings, you know. They were elementary, and they weren't considered good enough to get into the architect school. So, you know, and he was interested in building all those buildings when he was leader of Germany, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
He had the biggest stadiums in the world, you know, where they had all those rallies and stuff. So, you know, I always think history's so interesting because it's people, you know, it's people making the history.
You know what history's going to prove? That people like Frank Lowery has made Polk County a better place to live.
Oh, I don't know. I hope you're talking about my uncle instead of me.
I'm talking about you.
Well, I appreciate
I've enjoyed
it.